I never planned on turning my quiet lakeside life into a battle with my own HOA. But sometimes trouble comes straight to your backyard, literally. The morning everything changed. I walked down the small dirt path behind my cabin with my old fishing rod on my shoulder, expecting the same easy peace I always found near the water. But instead of the clear reflection of pine trees dancing on the surface, I was hit with a thick, sour smell that stopped me cold. My lake looked like someone had poured a giant bucket of mud and trash right into the heart of it. At first, I thought maybe it was runoff from the hillside after the storm. But when I got closer, I saw pieces of construction debris floating near the bank. Plastic, broken tiles, even a crushed paint bucket. My stomach dropped. I knew right away this wasn't an accident. And deep down, I already had a feeling who was behind it. The HOA had been giving me trouble for months, complaining about my early morning fishing, saying it disrupted neighborhood aesthetics. Fishing. Of all things, still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. So I walked along the edge of the lake, studying every bit of the mess. The more I looked, the more obvious it became. This was dumped on purpose. Someone had tried to ruin the water, maybe even make it unsafe. I felt angry, but beneath that anger was something sharper: determination. If they wanted to stop me from fishing, they were about to learn I wasn't the kind of man who walked away quietly. I didn't yell. I didn't storm up to the HOA board. Instead, I went back to the cabin, grabbed my old notebook, and started sketching a plan. If they wanted to play dirty, I was going to make sure the truth saw daylight. I spent the next few days gathering proof, watching patterns, and noticing the truck tracks near the far side of the lake. The story unfolding in front of me wasn't just about fishing, it was about my home, my rights, and the simple peace they tried to take away. And when I finally realized exactly what they'd done, that's when the idea hit me. A wild idea, a risky one, but the only one that could expose everything. So I took a deep breath and started draining the lake. What happened next shocked even me as the water line began to sink inch by inch. I stood at the edge of the shoreline with my boots half buried in the damp mud, wondering if I'd officially crossed the line from frustrated homeowner to someone taking matters way too far. But every time that doubt crept in, I remembered the stinging smell of chemicals on the surface and the quiet way the HOA tried to brush off my earlier complaints, pretending nothing was wrong. They thought I would just let it go. They thought the lake meant nothing to me. What they didn't know was that this place had been my escape long before I ever had neighbors. I bought the land years ago when the lake was still wild and untouched. Back then, it felt like a hidden piece of peace nobody else had discovered. So watching it slowly drain now felt strange, like peeling back layers of a secret someone didn't want me to see. Over the next 2 days, the exposed shoreline widened. I kept checking the bottom for signs of what had been dumped. Every morning before work and every night after dusk, I walked the muddy ground with a flashlight, tracking tire marks, footprints, and small pieces of debris that didn't belong anywhere near natural water. It felt like the lake was telling its own story as it revealed more of the bottom. A neighbor named Tom caught me out there one night. He didn't say much, just looked at the shrinking water and raised his eyebrows. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. Even he knew something wasn't right. Even if he was too scared to say it out loud, the HOA stayed strangely silent. No knocks on my door. No emails. No warnings. Nothing. That silence made everything feel even more suspicious, like they were waiting for the right moment to act or hoping I would give up before. I discovered something they didn't want exposed, but it was too late for that. The lake was dropping fast, and every hour revealed more. And then, one morning, just as the sun barely touched the drained shoreline, I saw something half buried in the mud that made my heart stop. That object caught my eye before anything else. It wasn't just trash or debris. It looked like a metal box, partially buried and rusted from years underwater. My hands trembled as I knelt down to dig it out, wondering how long it had been hidden beneath the water and what secrets it might hold. There was a faint smell of chemicals again, stronger this time, mixed with the dirt and decay. I knew this wasn't just a random piece of junk someone tossed in as I pulled the box free. I noticed faded letters scratched into its side. I couldn't make out the full words yet, but the way it felt heavy and solid in my hands made my heart race. What if this was the key to everything? To the reason the HOA wanted to keep me away from the lake. I thought about the months leading up to this, how the HOA's friendly neighborhood committee had suddenly become cold and distant. How meetings about community improvements were always vague but pushed hard to restrict lake access. They claimed it was for safety and environmental concerns, but their actions said something else. And now this box felt like proof there was a deeper story, buried beneath the surface, one they were desperate to hide. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how this small community, where I'd trusted neighbors and rules, could be hiding something so dark right beneath our feet. The thought that someone might have dumped waste to poison the lake, my sanctuary, made my stomach churn. It wasn't just about fishing anymore. It was about fighting for the truth, and maybe even for justice. But exposing the truth meant going up against people with power and influence. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for that kind of battle yet. What if the box was only the beginning? What else could the draining lake reveal? And more importantly, was I ready for the answers? The next morning, I didn't waste a second. I grabbed a flashlight and the rusty box, heading straight to the local library to dig into public records and any information about the lake and the HOA. What I found only made the knot in my stomach tighten. There were permits supposedly for environmental cleanup years ago, but the details were vague and incomplete. Some reports mentioned minor contamination, but nothing about what I had seen in the lake. It was like they were hiding something. And the HOA's silence wasn't just cold. It felt calculated, like they were waiting for me to hit a dead end. Back home, the lake was nearly empty now, and the muddy bottom looked more like a crime scene than a peaceful fishing spot. Every step I took sank deeper into the thick sludge. As I moved closer to where the box was found, I noticed fresh tire tracks nearby too knew to have anything to do with past cleanup efforts. Whoever was involved was still active, still hiding. That night, I heard voices outside my cabin. Quiet at first, but growing louder, like a warning. I peered through the window and saw a group of people I recognized, members of the HOA. Maybe some contractors too, standing near the lake's edge, shining flashlights into the mud where I'd been working. My heart pounded. Were they there to intimidate me? To stop me from digging deeper? The tension wasn't just about the lake anymore. It was personal. Every move I made felt watched. The community I thought I knew had become a maze of secrets and fear. I couldn't tell who to trust. Friends were distant, neighbors whispered behind closed doors, and the HOA's grip tightened like a noose. But I couldn't back down, not now. I had to know what was in that box. I had to understand why they dumped waste in the lake to stop me from fishing. Was it just about control, or was there something worse beneath the surface? The answers were so close I could almost touch them. And then, as I reached the water's edge one last time before calling in help, I saw something that froze me to the spot, something buried deeper in the mud, half hidden but unmistakably there. Whatever it was, it changed everything. I froze, staring at the strange shape half buried in the mud. It wasn't just trash or debris. This time it looked like a large, sealed container, something industrial and out of place in a quiet lake. My mind raced. Why would something like this be hidden here? And more importantly, what was inside? The weight of the moment pressed down on me, and a cold shiver ran through my spine. This was no longer just about wasted fishing rights or neighborhood disputes. This was something much bigger. I grabbed a nearby stick and carefully poked at the container. It shifted slightly, releasing a faint hiss, like air escaping from a long-sealed trap. That sound made my heart skip a beat. What if whatever was inside was dangerous? Chemicals. Toxic waste. Had the HOA dumped more than just construction debris into the lake to stop me from fishing? The pieces didn't add up, and suddenly the quiet community felt like a ticking time bomb. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was an anonymous message. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it. This isn't just your fight." My hand shook as I read it again. Someone was watching, and they wanted me to back off. But why warn me if they cared about keeping this secret? The message only made me more determined to find out the truth. The stakes were higher than ever. The lake wasn't just polluted, it was a cover-up. Someone had risked everything to hide what was really going on beneath the water. I knew I needed help, but who could I trust? Reaching out to the authorities felt risky. What if the HOA had already gotten to them? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the drained lakebed, I realized this was no longer just my personal battle. It was a fight against a dangerous secret that could affect the whole neighborhood. And the clock was ticking with my heart pounding. I made one decision. I was going to call the EPA, whatever this was. It was time to bring in the experts and shine a light on the hidden truth. But would that be the moment everything changed? Or the moment things got even worse? I made the call to the EPA early the next morning, my hands still trembling as I explained everything: the waste dumped in the lake, the rusty containers, the anonymous threats. They promised to send a team out right away, but told me to be careful and not to confront anyone myself. The waiting felt unbearable. Every creak of the trees, every shadow across the empty lakebed set my nerves on edge. When the investigators arrived, they wasted no time. They took samples from the water, the mud, and the containers I had uncovered. It didn't take long before the truth started to unravel. The waste wasn't just regular trash. It contained hazardous chemicals linked to an old unreported industrial project nearby. And those sealed containers were holding toxic sludge that had been illegally dumped years ago. The HOA hadn't just been trying to stop my fishing, they'd been covering up a massive environmental violation to protect property values and keep the community's reputation clean. The EPA's presence forced the HOA to act. After some heated confrontations and official warnings, they finally admitted to their actions, though their explanation felt weak and rehearsed. The lake had been poisoned, and my persistence had uncovered the dangerous secret they wanted buried under the surface. But just as relief started to settle in, there was one last surprise. While reviewing the site, the EPA team uncovered hidden documents inside one of the containers. Records that didn't just implicate the HOA, but also linked a local developer and a politician in a scheme to buy the land cheaply, then turn it into a private resort. The dumping was part of a plan to sabotage the lake's natural beauty, forcing residents to sell their homes. I realized then that my fight was only the beginning. What started as a battle over fishing had uncovered a web of greed and corruption that went far beyond my little lake. And now, with the EPA involved and secrets exposed, the whole community was watching and waiting to see what would happen next. After everything was out in the open, the community was shaken but hopeful. The EPA began a full cleanup of the lake, carefully removing the hazardous waste and testing the water until it was safe again. Slowly, the lake started to recover, and with it, the spirit of the neighborhood. People who had once stayed silent began speaking up, realizing that protecting the environment wasn't just about rules, it was about preserving the place they called home. The HOA's leadership was replaced. and the new board promised transparency and real care for the lake and its surroundings. As for me, I became something of a reluctant local hero, not because I wanted the attention, but because I refused to let my home be poisoned and my fishing stolen. The fight had been hard, but it taught me how important it is to stand up for what's right, even when the odds seem stacked against you. Looking back, I understand now that sometimes the quietest places hold the loudest secrets, and sometimes standing alone is the only way to start change. The lake isn't just water and fish, it's a symbol of community, trust, and resilience. It reminded me that when people work together, even the darkest secrets can be uncovered and dealt with. If there's one thing I want you to take from this story, it's this: don't ignore the signs, even if it feels like no one's listening. Protecting our environment is protecting ourselves. And when something feels wrong, don't be afraid to ask questions. Dig deeper and demand the truth. So, next time you're near a quiet lake or a peaceful pond, remember that sometimes what's beneath the surface matters more than what you see. And sometimes standing up for that truth can change everything. If you enjoyed this story and want more intense thrillers and suspenseful adventures, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it with friends who love a good mystery. Your support helps me bring you more stories just like this one.